Hi, everybody. I'm KHOU Meteorologist Pat Cavlin coming to you from Houston, Texas with your tropical update on Hurricane Fiona for Sunday, September 18th, 2022. Still a very powerful Category 1 hurricane with winds sustained at 85 miles per hour. The storm is still moving to the northwest at about 10 miles per hour. But as we get you in for a closer look, notice how it's over open water and the center of the storm is really starting to explode now. This is the satellite imagery. Wherever you see that gray and white shading, that indicates those higher cloud tops, indicating very healthy thunderstorms. And when you see that around the center of the storm, that indicates the storm is trying to strengthen. And we will likely see that here as we go through the overnight. So the storm right now in between the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico over the Mona Passage. That's the waterway, the strait that separates the Atlantic Ocean from the Caribbean. So very warm water here in this passageway as the storm goes to the north. As we switch over to radar, though, you can see the Dominican Republic has been pretty dry, really, through the majority of the day. In fact, they had a lot of sunshine just earlier during the day on Sunday. Different story, though, for Puerto Rico, as tremendous amounts of rainfall have moved on shore. The reason for that is because this is the dirty side of the storm. This really perfectly illustrates why we call it the dirty side of the storm, because these huge rain bands come feeding in off the Caribbean. And these rain bands, I mean, we'll pause it here. These rain bands extend about 200 miles down to the south, and they just constantly move on shore. So this is the side of the storm where we see flooding rainfall, where we see the highest winds and also the highest storm surge, because think about the circulation around the system, right? It's counterclockwise, and so the winds move in that direction. So this is where we get the strongest winds as the storm moves out in that direction. All of the winds kind of accelerate on that side of the storm. So bottom line, this is just the worst side of the storm to be on. That's the side that Puerto Rico has been on all day. So from Guayama all the way up towards San Juan, towards the extreme eastern end of the island, we've seen rain totals so far on the order of 15 to 20 inches. By the time it's said and done, we could see nearly 3 feet in a few spots. So devastating flash flooding, mudslides also a concern, and the entire island right now without power. All of this, by the way, happening about 100 miles away from the center of circulation. So here's the center again, just to the south and east of the Dominican Republic. These rain bands here are again about 100 miles away. So a pretty huge distance separating the worst part of the storm from the actual center part of the storm. And that's somewhat typical to see in a relatively weaker system like a Category 1 hurricane. You get a little more of a lopsided nature here, whereas with a Category 4, Category 5 storm, it would be a little more compact around the center. So when does it stop raining in Puerto Rico? Let's put future track into motion here. By 4 a.m. Monday, the center of circulation now making landfall here on the east end of the Dominican Republic. Notice, though, it is still raining. We still get these persistent rain bands moving onshore towards Puerto Rico. So the rain continues even as the center of circulation pulls away. We continue the animation now into the middle part of Monday, so around noon. This is when the heaviest of the rain finally starts to taper off in Puerto Rico and wraps a little more closely around the center of the storm. Notice we're also getting a more of a defined eye to the system here, and that indicates a bit of a healthier system. Notice it's a little more symmetric, it's more compact. So this is the point where the storm, back over open water, is really going to start to intensify and become the strongest that we've seen it so far, potentially reaching Category 2 strength as it pulls away from the Dominican Republic and Puerto Rico. And it continues that northwestward movement at least through Monday evening, coming on approach now towards the Turks and Caicos. And finally, out towards Puerto Rico, things start to dry out, just a few showers left over, but the heaviest of the rain should end by midday Monday. But between now and then, on top of the 15 to 20 and 25 inches of rain the island has already seen, we could get an additional 6 to 9 inches in Ponce, 4 to 6 inches in Guayama. And then into the Dominican Republic, we could see on average about 5 to 10 inches of rain, especially for the eastern part of the island. So still a prolific rainmaker over the next 24 hours before the storm finally lifts to the north towards the Turks and Caicos. Notice, though, the heaviest of the rain, I think, will fall over open water, which is good news. But again, the damage is still done, especially for Puerto Rico, where they're dealing with catastrophic flooding. And again, they are still without power. So going to the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center, we've still got hurricane warnings for Puerto Rico, the east end of the DR. We've got tropical storm warnings up right now for the Turks and Caicos. This storm is expected to potentially reach Category 2 hurricane status as we get into Monday afternoon. So a 100-mile-per-hour storm at that point. By Tuesday afternoon now, we're starting to see the storm get closer to the Turks and Caicos. The good news, though, for the Turks and Caicos is that the storm passes to the east. Remember what we were talking about before. This is the side of the storm where you get the worst impacts. So if the Turks and Caicos here are going to be on the opposite side, the impacts will be significant but not as severe as what Puerto Rico saw. And that's on the current forecast track right now. But remember, the storm can travel anywhere within this forecast cone. So still a storm that the Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos will have to keep a very close eye on. Beyond that, though, the storm does take that northeastward curve out to sea and towards Bermuda. This is going to be a storm that Bermuda has to watch very carefully here as we get into the end of the week. So this is Thursday. So by Thursday, Bermuda could be seeing, or at least could be looking down the barrel of a Category 3 hurricane. So this is a significant storm. And again, they're going to be on the bad side of the storm based on this current forecast track. They'll be on the east side of the storm with the worst impacts. So Bermuda, do not let your guard down here towards the end of the week. This could be a very big storm for you. But the storm does stay very far to the east from the east coast of the United States. So Florida, the Carolinas, Georgia, this is not going to be a concern for us, at least this time around. So this storm, just going back a second, made landfall this afternoon, Sunday afternoon here around the Lajas area. That's on the west end of Puerto Rico as a Category 1 hurricane. That is almost 5 years later to the day that Hurricane Maria made landfall on the opposite end of the island as a Category 4 storm. Maria was the worst storm to ever impact the island, at least in its history. And again, that was a Category 4 hurricane, devastated the island, widespread flooding. Some people didn't have power for an entire year. This storm, much weaker, a Category 1, but doing similar impacts of devastation just based on the position. Now, the wind speeds obviously are not as high, but the flooding is catastrophic. The entire island, again, plunged into darkness with no power. And that's because we are on the worst side of the storm with this track. When you ever have a track like this, it puts the entire island on the eastern side of the storm. So that dirty side with nonstop rain and wind and storm surge. Going to be a long next few weeks ahead for Puerto Rico. All right, so here's the latest breakdown on Fiona. Catastrophic flooding continuing across the island of Puerto Rico. The entire island, again, without power. That's 1.4 million people. And earlier in the day today, even though sustained winds are at 85 miles per hour, they did report a wind gust over 100 miles per hour. So that really doing a number on the power infrastructure on the island. So what is steering this storm? It has to do with two areas of high pressure. We've got one over the Gulf, the other one out here over the Atlantic. And high pressure typically blocks storm systems from going anywhere, right? So typically, when you see this kind of a pattern, the storm should move in this direction. Well, that's not happening because over the next few days, there's going to be a weakness that develops in between these areas of high pressure, and they actually split. So one goes off towards the east, the other establishes itself over us here in Houston, Texas, creating this huge dome of extreme heat and humidity, and that gives Fiona this big escape route to head up towards the north and east and away from the United States. So that heat ridge that develops over the south central United States is actually acting to deflect Fiona away from the mainland U.S. So let's do a model comparison now. We'll take our two most reliable models, the American GFS and the European computer model. The American's in yellow, the Euro is in red. And notice they're both doing a great job with the starting position. So they both have it in the same spot here in the Mona Passage. As we get into tomorrow and the next day, so into Tuesday and Wednesday, this storm is going to be just to the north and east of the Turks and Caicos. So it does move a bit slow here over the next few days, not covering a lot of ground. From there, though, it accelerates northward and it becomes a big problem. Again, remember what I said for Bermuda. Both the European model and the American model both have this storm passing just to the west of Bermuda. This could be a worst case scenario for Bermuda. This would be Thursday, Friday time frame. So again, this is something that we have to keep a very close eye on towards the end of the week. And it's not just wind, it's not just rain that's going to be impactful. It's going to be waves and storm surge as well. So here's the center of circulation on Tuesday. The coloring on here indicates wave heights, and then we've got the wind streams on here as well. So here's the circulation around that storm. look what happens here. The highest wave heights on the order of 20 to 25 feet come into the Turks and Caicos as we get into Tuesday. So even if you avoid the worst of the wind and the rain, the storm surge potential for that part of the world could be significant here for the start of the week. So even though tropical storm warnings are in effect, I would not be surprised to see storm surge watches and warnings to go up as well. From there, the storm continues to the north and again then becomes an issue for Bermuda, where we see wave heights on the order of 25 to at least 30 feet possible. But it's not just Bermuda that will see these extreme wave heights. Notice up and down the East Coast, we're in the 6 to 10 foot range. So huge swells will be present up and down the East Coast as we go through the upcoming week. There's going to be several days here where we can see coastal flooding, beach erosion from the Carolinas all the way up towards New England as huge waves batter the coast. As this storm eventually makes its exit up to the north and east, these waves will likely stick around all the way as we get into next weekend. So we are now in the peak of hurricane season. It's been a pretty quiet season so far. Hopefully it stays this way. Fiona, obviously the most impactful storm that we have seen so far this season. And we are eventually going to see things wind down as we go through the next month or so. But now is not the time to let your guard down because anything can happen between now and at least the end of November. So stay with us on this YouTube channel. Stay with us on social media if you have any questions, comments, concerns. We are going to be tracking the latest on Fiona over the next few days with the impacts through the Bahamas, the Turks and Caicos, the Dominican Republic, the Puerto Rico, and also into Bermuda as we get into the end of the week. And of course, we'll update you on any other new developments that pop up in the tropics between now and the end of hurricane season.